What's going on? I got my new and good buddy Zach on the show today. Zach, dude, how have you been since New Orleans?
I've been good, dude. Just living the dream, man. Just hustling here back in Los Angeles. You know, living day by day. Can't complain. How about yourself?
Just big, small move recently. I just had my big workshop, so that's also pretty good. So things have been pretty good. I'm trying to focus, double down on the podcast and some content creation. So I'm excited
Cool.
for our episode today. You said that this is your first podcast you've ever been on.
It is technically my second, but the first one was so small that it doesn't really count. So
Ah,
yeah,
dude, they all count. They all count.
not
So
to be like judgmental, but yeah, this
cool.
is my first one called the about side hustles and things like that. So
Cool. All right. Well, perfect time. Let's dive into it. So Zach, you're out in LA. Tell us a little more about who you are, how you got to where you're at, what it is you do, and
sure.
let's roll.
Yeah, man. So I'm an account director at APM Music, and we're based here in LA. We have a nice office in Hollywood. I'm working home today. We go to the office like twice a week, and so yeah, APM's owned by Universal and Sony Music Publishing, about 50% each. It's a large production music library, a pretty respectable one. We have over 1 million tracks. Um, and so yeah, I mean, we have some pretty big clients. Some of my biggest ones are Pepsi, Salesforce, and Northwestern Mutual. APM as a whole, we have Disney and we have the NFL, pretty much every team in the NFL, the NBA, NHL, and the MLB all use our music. We have the Monday Night Football music, for example. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty much what I do.
Cool. And so what so you got all these different like companies and things, and what do you do specifically? Are you reaching out to these different companies? Are you the one creating the kind of music, or are you explain a little
Yeah,
bit about that?
so I'm more on the client facing side. So I basically make sure that my clients, the creative teams that they manage, are happy and always finding the music that they need. Um, Making sure they're aware of the search engine and things like that, so they're happy. We have a separate team of music directors that fulfills music searches. So if they reach out and say, "Hey, Zach, we're making this cool video. Do you have some cool jazz?" And I'll forward that to them, and they handle more of like the playlist making side. But I would say I handle relationship building, and I'm always trying to find new clients, obviously, but also take great care of the current ones as well.
Oh yeah, I love that, dude. And I mean, I know you probably heard me talking about how important relationship building and social support and all that other things is huge, especially in the entrepreneurial world. Just being able to communicate and talk to other people. I really believe that communication's like the baseline for success in anything in life, really. Like it's really hard to do anything by yourself, no matter how tough you are or how much of a lone wolf. You got to be able to communicate and connect with others, and I think that's a huge aspect of just being human too. um, so how did
Absolutely.
you get into this position?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to be quick about it. I mean, so basically, I moved here. I actually lived in Ireland for 4 years for college. I studied psych in Dublin, and I moved to LA right after that. And the first job I got, which I didn't really expect to get, was a sales job working in software sales. And so I did that for about 4 years, and it was a lot of cold calling, um, which sucked at first, but it really helped me a lot. And so I will say, if anyone here's listening and they want to get into sales or even just get better at your side hustle, I think doing some cold calling is a great skill to have because you know, it's terrifying at first, at least it was for me, but eventually it becomes easier. And you really have to listen, you really have to sound smooth, and you got to be able to handle objections on the fly. And I think there's a great skill to have in your tool belt, regardless of what you do in life. Um, so I got a software sales job. It was selling like engineer training software to high-rise buildings, movie studios, and corporations
Hmm.
too. And so it was a good experience, but I always kind of wanted to get in music. I pivoted after that to do it was kind of financial services sales for the produce industry, which is pretty different. didn't
Oh
love
yeah.
that. And so eventually I got my foot in the door of a music company because I love music. I always wanted to work in music. My friend got me in, and the only way in was at the front desk at this current company I'm at. And so got my foot in the door there, and I just really worked my ass off, and eventually, worked my way up. And I think it was a great skill to kind of develop. It was good that I had a sales background, which helped me move up fast, I think. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, that's pretty much how I got where I got. And I got promoted like right when COVID apocalypse happened, and I had to work from home all the time. And at first, I thought that was a bad thing, but it ended up being a good thing for me because I had no distractions. There was no FOMO. There was no like, oh, it's my friend's birthday. I got to go to this party or something. I just woke up 7 days a week and worked, and I think I really grew from that. And so maybe it's obvious advice, but I think working hard is definitely helped.
No, yeah, I love that. I mean, I talk about it all the time about basically villainizing working too hard, if you would, because it's just my background with working so many hours and things. But
For
other
sure, within
than
reason, of
other
course. Yeah,
Yeah, but it does build that extra layer of like mental resilience. Like, okay, yeah, now I can handle more. It really pushes your boundaries too.
for
And
sure.
speaking about pushing the boundaries and stuff, I want to kind of swing the conversation back to the cold calling because that really is like a terrifying thing for a lot of people. I mean,
Yeah,
so like most people today don't even just pick up the phone to call your friends. Like it's there's a
yeah,
weird disconnect now on just communicating with people. And I think most of that, especially in cold calling, is that like fear of rejection. So how
hmm
did you kind of like get over that? Was this something you just kind of just kept going and barreling through and eventually got
yeah.
better at it? Or is it still a little uncomfortable every time you got to kind of hop on something?
Happy to talk about that. So basically, I got this job. It was the first job I got in LA. I was only here for like a week, and I was like, okay, if they're gonna hire me, I'm gonna do it, whatever it is. I didn't have time to look for anything else. So my boss was like, "You're gonna have to do cold calling." I couldn't say no, really. I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, shit, how am I gonna do this?" So at first, I was honestly terrified. I almost quit. I was like, I'm not gonna call this VP in New York and try to pitch him on a product he didn't even know existed before I called. But I just manned up and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And if they say no, they say no, and it's fine. Don't take it personally. It's just business. So I did it, and I got a gatekeeper on the phone. I still remember the first call, and she's like, "Oh yeah, call back a different time." It's like, "Okay, I'll call back a different time." And then eventually, I kept calling, and eventually, I got the guy on the phone, and eventually got a demo, and eventually got the sale. So it takes perseverance, and I would say a great piece of advice is do not take it personally if you get a no. It's fine. Almost not only should you not take it personally, you should like embrace rejection. Be like, okay, I tried. Now I know next. And make a nice list and set a
Yeah.
number for yourself. Like at one point, I had to do 100 calls a day, and it's just nice
Dude, I
having
love
that kind of
that.
numeric value behind it, so you have progress. Um, and so if you even get one yes and 99 no's,
Zach, you
it's
there?
a great day in the sales world. So those are some things that come to mind if I'm trying to give advice to someone who has to do it. There's a ton of, I would also say, just how would you talk to a friend? You don't need to be all salesy, all like stiff. How would you talk to like your friend or your family member? Be personable, and that what you're trying to do is build trust at the end of the day. And if you can get someone to trust you, you can get someone to buy from you. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. But how do you handle it when you don't get a no and you don't get a yes? Because you said that she was like, okay, call back later. Because now you have to do the extra work of making sure that you like reschedule and follow through and do that. Like, because that can be
yeah,
daunting too, just that never ending no. And like, how do you know
yeah.
when to
Well,
just call it
eventually you have to
quits?
know when to quit. I mean, if you're just getting passed around, you got to know when to quit because then you're just wasting time on everyone's end. So definitely recommend getting a CRM, which I imagine a lot of people have heard of, but if you haven't, a customer relationship management system. Um, our company uses Salesforce, for example. There's a lot of cheaper ones. There's some free ones if you're really getting started. And that helps you keep track of and your customers. Always take good notes on every call because you're gonna forget and be like, okay, I had Stacy on the phone. Stacy said call back later, and then you can set a task reminder like call back in 2 weeks. Okay, boom, call back in 2 weeks, and then that way you don't feel like oh no, I'm forgetting because you're gonna forget. You can't keep track of thousands of leads. So definitely get organized, get a system in place, and stick to it. Is what I'd say.
Yeah, I love that. Um, because that just levels it right into the next part, which is like being organized. And it sounds like the Salesforce CRM really takes care of that, um, on the whole, that side of the world. But how do you keep yourself organized yourself in like the day-to-day kind of thing? Do you follow your own schedule, or is it just kind of
Um,
like, all right, work and then chaos?
I use OneNote a lot. I'm even using it right now as I'm talking to you. So it's it's a great tool and it seems kind of intuitive, like, oh, obviously take notes, but it's free on Microsoft and I think it's on Apple too. And you kind of I think Apple has a different one that's kind of the same concept, but you can segment your notes really easily in terms of personal things, business things, and set to-do lists and take notes and it carries with you in the cloud. It's saved in the cloud. Um, that's how I do it personally. I also have a sticky note like app in the corner of my screen at all times,
Mhm.
just like, and every day I have a different to-do list basically. So yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah, do you find that it's easier just to chop those to-dos off, or do you feel like your to-do list is just never ending?
it never ends, but I at least get, I can at least get it shorter. But as soon as I, slash a couple of things out, a couple of things add to it, but that's just life. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like people try to shoot to clear their like to-do list, but I feel like are you even really living if you have nothing really to do? Like that's kind of like
right.
when so many people they make it to retirement and then they just literally have nothing to do and then that's when they go crazy kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, pretty much. You got to be doing something. Studies show if you work till you're pretty old, you're actually more likely to live longer if you keep working to an extent. Not like don't kill yourself, but if you're doing at least
yeah.
something, people tend to at least cognitively stay more in the zone. If they work longer.
Yeah, and I totally believe that too. I remember speaking with one of my friends, and he was talking about planning for retirement and all these other things, and I was really listening in with it, and he was asking me, he's like, "Oh, when do you plan on retiring?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't really know. At least currently at my own where I'm at currently in life is I really enjoy what I do and I don't see myself ever really giving it up. I love connecting with people, building relationships, kind of helping other people grow and things. So I feel like I'll
Yeah,
always have something kind of going for myself. So hopefully that carries over into many years, right?
for sure. And studies also show. I saw this TED talk once. It was talking about how they did an analysis on things that make people tend to live longer, and the number one factor, even beyond even smoking or drinking, is if you have a lot of connections. If you have a lot of friends, you will actually live longer. You'll be healthier. You're less likely to get heart disease. Um, so even beyond the business world, from the health world, both mental and physical, I would recommend connect with as many people as you can.
Oh yeah, dude, I love that. And I mean, we started off talking about relationship building and getting into that whole thing. And you and we hit it off pretty quickly when we were down in New Orleans not that long ago. So what are some of your tips for making friends, connecting with people, whether it's like a business setting or a personal kind of setting? What are the things that you do?
That's a good question. I think it comes down to um, being able to ask good questions right off the bat. Um, you can ask one good question, you can instantly become somebody that somebody finds like they can um, talk to you and be real with you. And I think that's almost what a friend is to some extent, is like somebody that they trust to kind of confide their issues with you.
Hmm.
So I would recommend. I haven't read it for a long time, but there's a great book. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. How to Make Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. And he
Yeah.
talks about that, and it's about how to, essentially ask the right questions, remember their birthdays and things like that, and people remember that.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'd say ask the right questions, be on good form, get plenty of sleep, and just be the best version of yourself, and that's kind of how you teach other people to respect you as well. You respect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think asking the right questions is huge, and the next step from that though is you can't just ask the great questions. You gotta also make sure that you're listening, like you just said, like remembering people's birthdays, and you said that earlier too. Even on sales calls, you got to make sure that you're listening to what they're saying, because no one wants to just talk to be talked. They want to be heard, and I feel like that's right there with what you just said too. So
Yeah, like you don't want to go to the doctor and the doctor's like, okay, take this. So you didn't hear what my issue was.
yeah,
You want to listen. You want to write down what the issue is. Really hear them. I think the best salespeople listen more than talk, and I think
yep.
applies not just to sales but anything really. So
I love that you said that about the going to the doctors too, because I know there's a lot of stuff, a lot of people always talking and whatever people have their feelings about doctors and such, but a lot of people are kind of feeling like today's they spend too much time just handling symptoms and just not really getting to the root cause of things, and that goes back to kind of like what you were saying, like don't like yeah, you want to be prepared for conversation and understand, but that active listening and really understanding who the other person is, that helps open the connection a little bit further, I feel like. So
for
like,
sure.
as opposed to just people prescribing medication, it's like, okay, well, what are the issues for why certain issues are happening? Like, is there a way that we can cut it off ahead of time? Prehab is the best rehab, is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you have a conversation with someone you just met and you're doing all the talking, the other person is not gonna necessarily like you as much versus if you ask them good questions about themselves. People like talking about themselves. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah.
But you do, I feel like you do got to be a little bit careful with that too, because I know when I first started getting into like networking things and such, and tell me if you feel the same way, but like I would dive into just asking all the questions because it was easier for me to ask the questions than it was for me to just kind of talk about myself.
Hmm.
And that led to people feeling like they were being interviewed or interrogated. So
Mm,
I need to consciously make the decision that okay, I can still ask good questions, but I need to make sure that I'm contributing to the conversation as well. So
for sure.
how do you know like how much to put in? So let's keep it on the sales talk kind of conversation. Like yeah, you got to get all that information, but how vulnerable do you get with sharing about who you are and things like that, and does that help in sales calls?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, yeah, you can't just be a question asker. You have to also insert your personality at the right times. Um, because people want to buy from people that are interesting, I think. Um, and so you want to kind of sprinkle in little tidbits of like interesting things, but you don't want to overdo it so that you're just talking about yourself. But it's a balance. It's a balance. You want to strike that balance, and I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. You just kind of have to feel it out, and at some point you have to use your own intuition and flow of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to kind of summarize that is conversations. The skill of conversation is like an art. You got to be
Mm,
able to, it's like dancing almost. You got to be able to give and take at the same time and twist and turn with the person you're communicating with.
right. And I think a good skill to be able to have too is I find a lot of salespeople these days they tend to over rely on email instead of picking up the phone. Sometimes yeah, you can answer someone's question with an email, but sometimes it's way better to pick up the phone and really understand what's going on, and it's an opportunity for them to have a stronger relationship with that client. Um, like I had an email this morning of a client who had a question, and I was about to email them back, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to call them because it's a good opportunity. Um, Verizon actually is the client, so it's
Nice.
use opportunities to if you can call someone, do it, but also know sometimes people really would prefer an email, so it takes you have to go with your gut a little bit sometimes and get a sense of the kind of person you're dealing with. If they're
Yeah.
super slammed and they actually would like an email and they're like, I don't want to talk to Zach right now, then send an email. But if you think it's something that's worth the conversation, definitely have the conversation.
Yeah. Just a little detour here. I know when you shot me a text earlier today about confirming our call, I sent you a voice message back because I just couldn't do the text thing, and sometimes it's a little bit easier just to kind of do that, and made me think like, have you ever encountered certain situations where like you absolutely just needed to get on the phone to kind of talk to somebody about something, but they were just like so anti the phone conversation, like
Yeah,
how like
all the
yeah.
time. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I imagine.
yeah.
Um, so we talked a little bit about mindset. We talked some communication, some relationship building things. What else you got going on that keeps you performing at the high level in your job and different things you've got going on?
Um, I mean, I could give a few other things I think that help me at least, and maybe that help some other people. I
Sure.
personally, I've gotten into meditation lately. I meditate now for at least 20 minutes every morning before I do anything. And even if I have an insane to-do list, which is pretty much all the time, and I might be like, well, why am I going to spend 20 minutes just sitting here and just like focusing on my breathing and stuff like that when I could be emailing people back? And it's like, it's a worthy investment of time, in my opinion, because every time, at least that I've done it, I find that I have a better, more productive day. Even if I, you know, spent 20 minutes just sitting and relaxing,
Hmm.
you feel more calm, you feel more focused, and it's not something everybody has an easy time with. But if you can do it, if you're willing to even try it, I think it's worth it. Um,
Oh yeah,
I
dude, I
personally use,
totally think so.
yeah, yeah. Like, do you ever meditate?
Dude, yeah, all the time. I use the Headspace app, so shout out to Headspace. That's a great app. They got a free service and everything for that. I love it. But I gotta ask you, you do it first thing in the morning, like as soon as you wake up?
As soon as I wake up, I'll have a cup of coffee before I even eat breakfast,
Okay.
and then while the coffee's kicking in, I meditate. And then at
Yeah, I was
the
gonna
end, I'm
ask you
like,
because
yeah.
I
And then
would
at the
fall
end,
back
I'm like,
asleep
let's
if I
go.
didn't get the caffeine in.
Yeah. So yeah, it gets me in the zone, and I'm just like, all right, you know what? Let's do it. And it's especially for sales because your voice is even the little intonations in your voice are carried over. And like there was a study that was done on interviews, for example, and it found that I forget the exact numbers, but it was like only 2% of what affected whether or not someone was hired was the content of what they said. 30 something percent was how they said it, the style, the emotion, the way they said it. And like 70% or something like that, something crazy was body language, just straight up body language. So like
Wow.
I think if you can invest on, having great body language, great intonation, it's almost better than focusing on the substance of what you're saying. And for me personally, meditation helps me get, I think, in a better mindset to
Zach, you there?
have good intonation in what I'm saying. So yeah, you the connection breaking up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I now we're good. We're back together.
Cool.
Yeah, so I heard you were saying the body language was another big portion of it. And
Yeah, and obviously that doesn't apply when you're on the phone, but then I would say that the way and the style and the intonation and the emotion behind what you say carries even more so over the phone. So
yeah,
if
I don't
meditation is
remember.
that thing to help you get a better intonation, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're on sales calls, obviously you can't see the other person's the body language and stuff, like unless you're on Zoom. But I do remember seeing somewhere that even just still like standing up, getting yourself in that positive kind of thing, like moving around while you're on these sales calls, that transfers over. And I remember somebody once was with like it was either with like telemarketers or service or something like that, and they did a study on people who were smiling while they were on the call, and just you can't see the other person smiling, but when they would smile, they would transfer over a better feeling to the recipient on the other side, and that would positively impact. So even just smiling, even when you're not face to face, can carry over into the messages you're trying to portray.
Absolutely, for
I don't
sure.
know too
Yeah,
much about like frequencies and stuff like that, but I don't know if you know anything, but I would imagine that kind of brings everything up. And even when there's like no physical connection and you're transferring it audibly, I feel like that still goes over.
absolutely. Yeah, that was a thing at one of my sales jobs when I was at the produce financial company or whatever. We were in a room. It was like 20 of us, all just making cold calls together for like all day, every day, 5 days a week. And our boss was always into like smiling while you talk, and I think it helped. Like the ones that smiled did better.
Nice. Yeah, I
Um,
love that.
and I will say another thing that I do is I don't know if you've ever heard of the book "The Greatest Salesman in the World" by O.G. Mondino.
No, I mean, I might have heard of it, but I definitely haven't read it.
So yeah, it's I highly recommend it personally. I think for anyone listening, even if you don't do anything that has to do with sales, it's just about having kind of a positive outlook in general and how you approach business. And yeah, and basically it has 10 principles of wisdom called scrolls in the book. And each you're supposed to read one scroll every day, 3 times a day for a month before you move on to the next scroll. And there's 10. I didn't really get to 3 times a day personally, but if you can, or to you. But I try to read one section before I meditate now, and it helps me. Each scroll has kind of it's almost like brainwashing yourself to success because like each
Mm.
scroll has a different sort of principle. Like the first one is have good habits and be a slave to your good habits, and throw out the bad ones. And it has a very poetic way of saying it, and it's almost like a meditation in itself, just reading it. And like the second scroll is to begin each day with love, and I think that's a wonderful mindset. Um, and yeah, it just has some really cool quotes in it. Like there's one, um, it's better to aim with your spear for the moon and hit a bird than to aim for a bird and hit the rock. And I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
also a great mindset. So just a lot of little tidbits of poetic wisdom I find in this book. Um, so I don't. If I
yeah.
had to recommend one sales book, I would say this one, "Greatest Salesman in the World," is a great outlook for any entrepreneur, regardless of what your role is.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out because I love getting into new books and things like that. And it sounds like I'm already right aligned with the book too. Starting off with good habits and then starting the day with love. I pretty
There
much
you
have a
go.
morning routine that I follow, and one of the first things that I do in the morning, aside from meditation, is gratitude practice. So I've been practicing that for now. I think a little over 200 days in a row. So it's like boom, and I just feel along with meditating, but with the gratitude, I don't know how to explain it other than just everything happens to go well for me. I just like happen to feel like things, even when things don't go right, somehow they work out. And I just feel like that mindset and all that stuff really adds to that.
Exactly, and positivity is contagious. And if you want someone to do business with you, they're far more likely to do business with someone positive than someone who isn't as positive. So any little technique, regardless of what's going on in your life, because stuff's always going to happen. There's always going to be setbacks. But if you can be resilient emotionally, that's very powerful, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I try to talk about that a lot with my coaching clients is about like shifting the perspective to shape your reality. So it's all it's the way you look at things. When certain things like if you can find that silver lining, then you come out as a win. Kind of like whatever that saying is. It's like every loss isn't a failure or something like that. As long as you live or as long as you learn from it and you move forward, it's still like a positive. I have no idea what it is, but I totally butchered it. But um, as long as you're learning, you're still growing and continuing to get better. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's this
And
one.
how do you continue to evolve and level up your different personal practices and things like that. So aside from the meditation and things like that, like where are you, like, other books are you learning from, or are you just kind of push packing it all together? Do you have a mentor or a coach or something that shows you these different things?
I mean, I've had mentors over the years, from like my previous bosses. I wouldn't say I have one in particular right now, but I mean, yeah, I also find, I personally think, there are some books with some great tidbits of wisdom in there, and I also am a believer in that there's no better way to learn than experience. And I think a lot of books kind of just regurgitate the same information in a different way. And
Hmm.
I could read a billion sales books, but there's nothing that it doesn't even come close to having to get on the phone and call people and try to just do it. So I recommend reading books, but I wouldn't let it control you. I think you're way better off getting your feet wet and learning from your mistakes. So that's really the best way you're going to learn. So
Oh yeah, dude, I love that because that was me for the longest time. I'm still currently on like a little bit of a detox from like my content consumption. But dude, I was like reading books, listening to books, reading like journal articles from different research books, and then like watching as much stuff as I could consume, and I would just consume. And then I realized that, like, hey, if I'm spending 90% of my time absorbing information and not actually doing anything, I'm not going to progress. I'm just going to stay in the same spot. So it's like, I think it was like Tony Robbins who says, is like, knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is like potential power. It's like once you finally take that action, do you unlock the power? So,
exactly, yeah, yeah. There's a quote that I jotted down by his name was John Ron, an entrepreneur, and he said that if you work hard at your job, you can make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. And I try to live by that, I guess, in that if you are always improving yourself and putting your best foot forward, the best version of yourself, then business is going to come. People are going to want to work with someone who exudes positivity and has a high opinion of themselves and things like that. And so, you don't want to always get caught up in the work. You want to get caught up also in always improving yourself as well. So,
oh yeah, man, I love that. I have a buddy of mine who I just touched base with a couple of days ago, and he was like talking about the dating apps and how he's having all this trouble like finding someone to connect with and all this stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm not an expert on dating by any means, but I know if you focus on yourself and you really work on the things for you to become a better person, that positivity is just going to attract something, at least, whether it's your work, relationship, whatever. You're just some better things are going to come to you, and it just starts with you working on yourself. And down the line, the right chick will find her way to you. So I
exactly.
totally believe that.
Yeah, I read a few years ago now. I read Matthew McConaughey's autobiography, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
actually
I
how I
loved it.
found out about this book in the first place, because he read this book. But he had a quote in there that was like, the arrow doesn't go to the target goes to the arrow." And it was about dating in the book. So, and I think it also applies to business too. But if you're the best version of yourself, the right person will come along, whether it's a soulmate or a business mate. So yeah.
Yeah, nice, dude. Well, I love that. And dude, I appreciate you taking the time for coming on today. But what else do you, as we kind of wrap up here, what else you got going on? You got any projects or anything that you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm working on an EP with some friends. I write music and stuff for fun on the side, and um, that's it's not really ready to share yet. But I'd say, in terms of the APM stuff, if anyone's out there and they're getting a business started, or we have the biggest clients in the world, but I personally have also helped a lot of freelancers and things like that who are just getting started, getting their feet wet, and they need music for, say, a YouTube channel or a podcast or anything like that. More than happy to help. We have to look out for our composers, but we also want to look out for our clients if they don't have a big budget and things like that. We're always flexible. So if anybody is in need of music or something, feel free to holler. My email is zsterlin at apmmusic.com. So ZSIRLIN at apmmusic.com with two M's in the domain. So yeah, feel free to holler if you have any questions about music or just life in general. I'm happy to be there for anyone and share what information I might have, and they might have some information for me too. So
there you go. If you got a show, you got any kind of projects or anything at all that needs some great tunes, you got to hit up Zach. He'll connect you and get that squared away. And again, dude, I appreciate it so much, dude. We talked about a lot of great stuff on the episode here. We talked relationships, communication, sales calls, mindset, meditation practices. We dove into a lot of things, and you dropped a lot of fire for people here. But I want to boil it all down. So if you were to throw it all out and you were to pick out the number one piece of advice that you could give to someone in order for them to help them survive the side hustle, what would it be?
Do not give up. As obvious it might sound, do not give up, because if it's hard, that means you're doing something right. Anything easy isn't worth doing. It's the hardest mountains to climb have the best views, and so if you're getting some resistance, it means you might be onto something. So clearly, you entered the entrepreneurial world for a reason. It's because you have a problem that you think other people that you can solve, that you think other people would benefit from, and just stay the course. Stay the course, and little bits of baby steps of progress are better than no progress at all. And I think it's a marathon, not a sprint. Stick to a routine, and you'd be surprised where the results are at later. So I guess that's what I'd say.
Boom, dude. Fire. Love it. Great work, man.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Thank you again so much for taking the time today on your busy afternoon. And thank you guys all for listening. Zach, man, I'll catch you soon, dude. I'll have to have you back on. We'll talk soon, man.
Likewise, brother.